Hey everybody, today I am out in rainy Washington because we are finally getting hands-on with the new Mach E Rally. And for this model year, there are some more important changes going on in the Mustang Mach E lineup than simply this new model. So we're going to talk about everything you need to know if you have any of the Mach E's on your shopping list. If you take nothing else away from this video, know that the entire Mach E lineup has been improved for this model year. We get more efficiency, more range, new electric motor in the back for extra performance, and then of course we get a new trim in the Mach E Rally. But they've also notably changed some of the other trims. We're going to touch on the GT and the GT performance in this video as well, of course, but let's talk about what's going on in the Rally first. We have the projector LED headlights. The entire lineup now gets this particular headlight design, and we get the distinctive Rally front end. The grille kind of looks like the Mach E GT, except that we have the Rally lights right here instead of fog lights lower on the bumper. We also get a unique lip at the bottom here and some extra underbody protection because we get about an inch of ride height increase. It's not quite an inch, but it's pretty close. And then of course we get the graphics package with this big stripe on it. Clearly the wheels are the big way to tell that this is the Rally and no other trim of Mach E. We have these very 1980s, let's be honest, white wheels, and this is the only part of the Rally that is not exactly my cup of tea. I actually like the suspension height increase. I think it actually looks really good on the Mach E, and it also solves one of my other complaints about the Mach E. If you recall, I actually owned a Mach E for a little bit more than a year, and I always thought the ground clearance was a little on the low side. A little bit less controversial for me, but perhaps more controversial for some is going to be this big wing right there on the hatch. That wing is the biggest change out back for the Rally trim. And what's controversial, I think, about it are these upper bars right here. So it's not just a side-mounted wing, it also has these support structures in the middle. It is definitely a very distinctive look, and it really gives me maybe Ford Focus RS vibes. That's kind of the direction I think that Ford was going with the Mach E Rally. The stripe continues across the back, and then we still have the progressive LED turn signals there. Now let's talk about what makes the Mustang tick. As before, there are two different battery packs, a standard range battery and an extended range battery. You can get either of them with rear wheel drive or all wheel drive. There's no such thing as a front wheel drive Mach E, which is definitely a difference between this and the Chevy or the Toyota competition, just to name a few. The standard range battery pack is an LFP battery pack. So if you're the kind of person that wants to charge to 100% capacity every day, you might want to choose that option. That is a little bit different than when the Mach E first launched. Both batteries used the NMC chemistry. If you're not a battery chemistry nerd, all you need to know is that the extended range battery in this one would prefer if you only charged it to about 80 to 85% on a daily basis, whereas the base model, they actually encourage you to occasionally charge completely full. And completely full every day is absolutely not a problem with that model. Every version gets a new rear electric motor. It is more efficient than before, so all models get extended range versus last year's Mach E. That means you can get an all-wheel drive, dual motor model with well over 300 miles of range. And kind of fun side note, back when we had our extended range all-wheel drive Mach E, it consistently beat Model Ys time after time after time in our range tests. We had 4 different viewers that actually kept challenging us to range experiments with their Model Ys. Every single time the Mach E beat them with miles and miles to spare. Now when we're talking about the Mach E GT or the Rally, these are the most powerful versions of the Mach E available. 480 horsepower, 700 pound-feet of torque total, with a bit of an asterisk for the GT. If you get the GT, you have to add the performance option in order to get that maximum power output. It is standard on the Rally. I think that is a fantastic way to do it because rather than having to order it at the time of purchase, you can opt for the extra power via an over-the-air update purchase, and it's actually quite affordable. It's around $700 or so. Definitely an option that I would select on this. That's going to get you 0 to 60 in about 3.3 to 3.4 seconds. This is solidly quick. DC fast charging has also improved with the NMC pack. It's about 20% faster than before, and Ford has said they've continually improved not just motor efficiency, but also motor and battery cooling strategies, and that's how we now get the Rally and the GT. One important difference that we should notice here actually before we get out on the road is that we no longer have the kind of power restrictions on the motor and battery that we did the last time we drove the Mustang Mach E GT. It would only allow you full power out of the battery for about 5 to 6 seconds, then it would start limiting it. It also severely limited it at lower states of charge. That does not seem to apply to this model. You're still going to get a gradual power reduction as the battery state of charge declines, but it's not as pronounced as before. Now, going a little bit out of order since it is definitely raining quite nicely outside, let's talk about the interior roominess. That's always been a big advantage to the Mach E. And for the Rally, it's an interesting advantage because we don't have a glass roof up there. It's actually not offered in this particular model, and that is something I really like. I would love to see a glass roof delete option, to be perfectly honest, in every trim, because it makes the interior feel a little bit more normal. We don't get that extra solar load in hot areas. And back here in the rear seat, it seems like we get a little bit of extra headroom as a result. Legroom is very generous. I was recently in the new Equinox and the Chevy Blazer EVs, and legroom falls somewhere between those two worlds. It's not quite as roomy as the Blazer in terms of legroom, but definitely feels bigger and roomier in here than the Equinox. When it comes to cargo capacity, the Mach E does really quite well, and that's because they really went in the same direction that Tesla did with a big front trunk under the hood. And this front trunk has not shrunk over time, because importantly, the Mach E does not get a heat pump. That's something that Ford has decided to add to the Lightning, but they decided not to add to the Mach E. I actually think that's a bit of a bummer because it would have improved efficiency. On the upside, the cargo area is exactly the same as it was before, and that's the big reason that we've seen shrinking front trunks in the Tesla lineup, because heat pumps simply take up more room, and that does reduce the front trunk cargo capacity. The interior of the Mach E hasn't changed too much, including in this Rally Edition. Up here we have the same center console we had before, sunglass holder right there, extending sun visors over here on the side. They slide to the side, and you'll notice that, as I said, in this model, no big glass roof up top. That's always been optional in the Mach E, but all the upper end trims got the glass roof, and it's not exactly my preference. We have Travis back there in there. He's gonna have to shout real loud because he does not mic'd up, but you have headroom back there, right?
Yeah, probably 2 or so inches.
Yeah, 2 inches, that's not bad. So, you know, reasonable amount of room in here. The one thing I dislike about the Rally is this plastic, this white plastic trim there on the front seats. Kind of gives me a little bit of a stormtrooper-y vibe, but I like the general design of the seats. Now, for my body shape, I find the front seat section here, these wings on the side, to be just a little bit constricting, but I think most folks will be just fine with that. It's a pretty aggressive bolster design, and these seats are going to be found not just in the Mach E Rally, but also in the GT, with, of course, different trim on that seat back there. Again, relatively aggressive bolsters right there, but the seat bottom cushion does not have terribly aggressive bolsters. You should know that this passenger seat bottom cushion does not adjust for tilt. That was actually one of the major complaints of passengers in my Mach E when I had it. That has not been changed. We do, however, have different upholstery here, so you can see this sort of faded out dot theme goes out to more of a geometric pattern in this sort of imitation suede center insert. And then we have that also over here on the doors without that pattern. So you can see that's an ultra suede insert there, but doesn't have that same pattern. We still have the B&O audio system that I had in mind. I really liked that. Harder plastics down there at the bottom of the doors and a soft touch armrest. The dashboard design, it's basically unchanged as well. We get the big touchscreen infotainment system here in the dashboard, running the latest version of their software, which of course features Apple CarPlay and Android Auto support right there in the center. Definitely different than GM's EVs or the Tesla EVs, of course, which don't offer smartphone connectivity in this way. But we no longer have the option to shrink CarPlay, it looks like. It looks like it's always going to be this relatively tall format. I did kind of like it when they gave you the option of having the slim format or the larger format. After having recently been inside the new Polestar vehicles, I have to say that this software doesn't feel quite as responsive sometimes. And if you're the kind of person that loves to just be able to hop in the vehicle and just drive away and have your system instantly boot up, this system doesn't do that. It wants to play the Ford logo song and dance thing to welcome you to the vehicle, and that does take a little bit of time. But you can see that some of these options, they do take a little bit of time to load. I find them really quite intuitive, but just keep that in mind. We have regular air vents that you adjust manually with your fingers, sound bar right up there on top. I actually really like the trim in this interior. I think they did a good job with their material selection. More of that faux suede right there, kind of a geometric pattern to that trim insert right there. Decently sized glove box below, no manual unlock for that, you just pull the lever just like normal. Also, we have a start-stop button over there. I think that is my preference. Over here we have a regular instrument cluster. It's on the small side of things, but I really appreciate the fact that we have one. That's definitely a big differentiator between this and the Tesla, but also it reminds me a little bit of the Polestar 3 and the Polestar 4. They also have kind of a small display up there. This is the driver monitoring system that's part of Blue Cruise. Blue Cruise availability has expanded across the lineup. I still think that Super Cruise is definitely better baked, so if you are considering Blue Cruise in your vehicle, I would recommend getting the shortest subscription to test it out, and then only decide on the 3-year subscription if you really are into it. Moving out from there, we have basically the same steering wheel that we had before, with some white accents down there for the rally trim, Mustang logo in the middle, controls for the Blue Cruise and the radar adaptive cruise control over there, and then controls for the infotainment system over there on that side. Moving down from there, we find lots of storage areas, and this is also another thing that I really appreciated in my Mach E, is how large and low this storage area is. So if you have bulkier items, pretty easy to have them there and not have them interfering with the climate controls or the infotainment controls. 2 big cup holders, the rotary style shifter. My only complaint about this is that I kind of wish park was the button in the middle, because 3-point turns, you do have to remember to get there to reverse, not accidentally get all the way over to park. Automated parking button right there, electric parking brake, and a soft touch armrest that lifts up to reveal a roller cover style storage cubby. To the left of the driver, we have the controls for the 3-position seat memory. You can also do driver profiles in the infotainment system as well. And then down here we have actual physical headlight controls. So if you're not a fan of some of the choices that GM has made recently on the Blazer and the Equinox EV, you might want to check out the Ford, because this definitely is electric Ford. All right, it's time to get the Mach E Rally out on the road, and I have to say, I think this might be my favorite version of the Mach E, but not necessarily for all the reasons that some people might expect. Today with me, I of course have Travis in the back seat and my good friend Sofian up here in the front seat, so everybody wave to them through the digital divide here. I don't know, what do you think? Is this your favorite version of the Mach E? And funnily enough here, we have 2 former Mach E owners in the front seat.
Yeah, so personally, I think that the new GT with the performance upgrade package looks better with the bronze appearance package and the eruption green color. But
is that just the white wheels?
It's the white wheels for me,
Oh yeah,
Alex.
I hate the white wheels.
I wish that they would offer the white wheels and like a gray finish to it.
White wheels are easy to swap. It's going to be harder
true.
to swap that cool rally nose.
That is true. That is true. I mean, the fact that they're offering this car makes sense, because Ford basically told us that they went to a lot of the owners, and owners said that they want to do basically like outdoorsy things. They put stuff on the roof, they take it onto dirt roads. So basically they were doing these modifications already, but now Ford's offering it from the factory.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job with that, because this is, I think, now finally a unique blend of options. That is not what that
The GPS is wrong.
GPS says turn there. That is not going to happen. But back on what I was saying, I think the Rally is now finally a unique blend of attributes in this segment, because the Mach E previously, the one I had, the Premium, and of course the GT you had, they were both kind of, let's be honest, they were faithful alternatives, shall we say, to a Model Y. They kind of copied a few things.
Right.
But with this, there isn't much out there like this.
No, I mean, like, a lot of these EVs are going to performance street oriented, but this is the first one that we're getting that's like off-road oriented. And I said it in my video, but I really view this car as the electric reincarnation of a Focus RS.
I can see that. Of course, the cool thing about the Rally is that we still get that 0 to 60 performance from the Mustang GT. 3.3 to 3.4 seconds is what Ford has been saying for this model, right? With the optional performance upgrade, which is standard on the Rally, but is downloadable on the regular GT. I also think that was a really good move for this year.
Yeah, I really love the fact that you can get it as a software over-the-air update, and it's only like $700
yeah,
extra.
It's cheap.
On the regular
Like
GT.
that's a good deal, I think. And then also they have sort of tweaked the drive modes a little bit. So the unbridled mode is now what you would assume it should be. Previously, they were really trying to go down a lot of different roads at the same time. They were saying, yeah, it's super quick 0 to 60. A lot of us were never able to get those 0 to 60 times. But then they were also saying it's going to be a track car, but then it only has 245 with tires on it. And so we want to reserve all this battery cooling capacity, et cetera, for tracking. And now I think they've gone a more realistic direction, realizing that people just want to go real quick, 0 to 60, and they want it to feel fast out on their favorite road.
Yeah, and I think the problem with the earlier versions, Alex, is the fact that they were using an outside supplier for the rear motor. Now Ford says they've switched it to the same rear motor from the Lightning. It's in-house developed. They've also upgraded the internals and the cooling of the front motor.
And it's lighter.
Yes, it's a little lighter, and now we get more range, more power. I mean, 100 or 700 foot-pounds of torque. That's like 70-ish more than the previous. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, this is, I think, a fantastic package. And then on top of that, we have the improved ride quality from the MagneRide dampers, the 0.8 inches of extra ground clearance, which helps us get a little bit more cushion out on the road. And then we have those higher profile tires. Now, you could obviously swap in different wheels and tires if you wanted to make your rally a little bit more street focused.
Right. But
I like the fact that that the tires and the wheels, I think, are the only thing that I, am not quite sold on in this model.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the white wheels are awful in my opinion. But I know some people really like the white wheels. But I do appreciate like the graphics on the car. You can delete the graphics as well, and then you've got that RS style rear wing, which I didn't think Ford didn't say if it added any actual downforce, but it looks damn cool.
I think I'm kind of torn on the wing. I think I might wing delete and wheel swap.
Yes.
But very minor concern on the wing. It doesn't bother me too much at all. And the wheels are the easiest thing that anybody can change aftermarket. Super simple.
Right.
It's going to be a lot harder to add the Rally front end design to your GT. If you want to buy a GT and then you like the Rally look, that's going to be a lot harder of a swap. Now, unfortunately, I have to tell you guys, we have not been able to do any sort of 0 to 60 or 6 to 0 runs out here because it is really, really wet out here in Washington. So unfortunately for that, you're going to have to wait until we get this at home. We also haven't been able to do any realistic on-road handling testing, although it's probably not going to be far removed from the previous Mach E's that we've all driven.
No, because the tires are the same width. They're still 245s. You still get a 20-inch wheel on the regular GT. This one definitely gives you that improved ride quality with the thicker sidewall and the Magno rheological dampers, but this car still feels pretty sporty. Actually, I really like the way this car continues to feel, especially if you're driving it back to back with like a Model Y.
So this is a more philosophical question, I guess. You had your Mach E for about a year, right? And I had mine for a little over a year as well. Do you miss it? Does this make you miss your Mach E?
There were a lot of things about that Mach E that I really liked, but at the same time, I noticed that it was obviously Ford's first effort into the space, and there were a lot of limitations that I didn't like about the car. So this essentially addresses a lot of the criticism that I had with my car, especially with the prison bars that they would limit power after 5 seconds of full throttle. So I'm glad they got rid of that. The problem is this space, Alex, has gotten really crowded.
That's true. It is definitely crowded. I have to admit, though, I kind of miss my Mach E, and this does, give me warm, fuzzy vibes and remembrances of my Mach E with the changes that I think I would have wanted.
Right.
My only major complaints in the one that we had were the ride quality I thought could have been a bit better. This addresses that. The DC fast charging could have been a bit better. This is 20% faster DC fast charging. Honestly, I thought the efficiency and the range was already really, really good. We had several viewers that kept reaching out to us, wanting to challenge us on range tests with their Model Ys.
Okay.
And they had the 330-mile range Model Ys. Our Mach E was rated for 272 miles, I recall, something like that. And we consistently beat them with 30-plus more miles of range every single time, whether it was our chosen route or a route they chose, etc. Time after time after time, the Mach E won every single time. It just has such a huge battery. I do wish that they had addressed some of the interior quibbles, I guess I could say. Your seat, the bottom cushion doesn't adjust for tilt.
No.
I know that bugged a lot of passengers. I didn't care because I was driving the car, so it didn't bother me. I like the fact that this model actually does not have the big glass roof.
Yep.
Because it improves headroom in the rear, and you aren't baking your head.
Correct.
These seats, I don't know if I'm convinced about these seats, though, with the big shoulder design.
Yeah, I mean, I find them to be comfortable, but I could see somebody who's a little wider frame, they might be a little constricting. I'm just sad that they're still not ventilated. I really think that at this price point, they should include ventilated seats because even EV6
100%.
and Ioniq 5 offer ventilated
And so many
seats.
other Fords have the ventilated option. Even less expensive Fords than this model have ventilated seats. This does seem like a weird omission. The fortunate thing about the rain during my time with the rally is that the dirt course was really more of a mud and gravel course than anything else, and fortunately Ford did let us have a pretty decent amount of fun. The rally is kind of an interesting beast because it's clearly pretty heavy, definitely heavier than something like a Focus RS, but for some reason I kept thinking back to that Focus RS time after time, because the Mach E doesn't really have SUV-like ground clearance, but it also has a really low center of gravity, two things that are definitely fine when it comes to a rally car. A lot of rally cars don't actually have that much ground clearance. But unlike a Focus RS, this has a strong rear power bias and a near perfect 50-50 weight balance. That was really, really noticeable out on the mud courses, because when you throw it into a corner, it doesn't feel overly front heavy or overly rear heavy. It feels pretty neutral, pretty balanced. And it's really easy to get the thing steering using just your right foot. Add a little bit of extra power, especially when you're in the rally mode, and it obviously sends most of that power to the new powerful rear electric motor. Yes, there is the front electric motor as well, so if you floor it, you're definitely getting all motors going at the same time, but in most of the driving conditions, it is solidly sending most of the power to the back, and that is definitely a fun thing, whether you're out on a track or you're out in a rally course like this. Now, about the tires, I was really interested in the tire choice. Fortunately, we were not out on the courses with Ford employees. We were actually out on the courses with just the regular training staff from the Dirtfish Rally School in Washington. And I was really intrigued about their thoughts on the tire. And some of their thoughts actually surprised me. They said that depending on exactly the kind of rally work that you're doing, they will often use all-weather tires because the tire compounds actually are a little bit closer to a true rally tire, or I should say as close as you could get and still be street legal, and that's probably the bigger thing here. Remember that this is a vehicle that you're supposed to be able to drive on-road and, mild off-road, rally course, etc., but still needs to be daily driver livable. And so they thought that the choice of this particular tire actually made a bit of sense. Most of it had to do with the behavior, especially in winter weather and a muddy style course like we were on. So actually kind of makes a bit of sense when you really think about it. As does the Magna Ride suspension. And this is not exactly the same Magna Ride setup that we find in the Mach E GT. It's basically the same damper, but with different software programming and, of course, that extra near an inch of ground clearance. Ford said that there is a little bit of extra suspension travel, but suspension travel is largely the same as the Mach E GT. It's just that the ride height actually goes up a bit. But thanks to the Magna Ride dampers, they were able to play with the software tuning in a way to definitely make it feel different out on the road. And one of the most important changes they made is a virtual bump stop, I guess for lack of a better term. Instead of relying on an external rubber or hydraulic bump stop where when the suspension reaches the end of its travel, it then either hits the rubber and starts to compress or hits a hydraulic ram and starts to compress, they can basically do all of that inside the damper. So the damper has an actual position sensor in there, so it knows exactly where the damper is in its travel. As it goes towards the top of its travel, it can get progressively firmer and firmer and firmer and firmer, and basically act like a bump stop. But it means that the transition can be a lot more smooth and a lot more controlled because it's adaptive, it's active with the rest of the suspension design. And that is, again, really noticeable out on this course because in rally mode, it's not extra firm. A lot of the bigger whoops and dips and potholes, etc., are really absorbed very nicely through the suspension. That part's probably not too surprising, but what is surprising is how well a relatively heavy vehicle like this handled going into larger dips at speed, where generally speaking, a lot of the competition would end up bottoming out. That kind of tuning is what I find really intriguing about the rally trim. This is not an electric rock crawler. It's not going to be a competitor to a Rivian R1S or honestly even something like a Polestar 3 or something like that that has a lot of ground clearance. More for your more traditional off-road trail, not really technical trail, mind you, in something like the Polestar, but you could definitely have a lot of ground clearance to clear boulders, even boulders the size of this TV remote control in a vertical orientation, whereas in something like a Mach E Rally, maybe you could clear that, but you couldn't clear this pencil case, something like that, because we still don't have an enormous amount of ground clearance. There are vehicles out there that would get 8, 9, 10 inches of ground clearance, etc. Subaru Solterra is another excellent example in the mainstream space. This is going after a different kind of sports fun. And again, that's what I find intriguing and unique about the Rally. We have off-road EVs, we have on-road EVs, high-performance EVs, but this kind of from-the-factory Rally EV, that's pretty interesting and unique. Actually, I kind of dig it. All right, guys, let's talk about pricing, and I apologize for the notes, but I left my hood at home, and I seem not to have properly waterproofed this jacket last time I washed it. So let's just roll through the pricing here. The standard range rear-wheel drive model is going to be $39,995. If you want the model that I last owned, which was the premium extended range model, all-wheel drive, that's going to be $49,995. And from that point on, the GT and the Rally start looking like really good deals because the pricing has definitely softened a little bit here in this lineup. $53,995 gets you the GT. It's only a little bump above the all-wheel drive extended range premium. And if you want the Rally, this is the most expensive at $59,995. All of those prices compare really quite well with the competition, including the Tesla competition, which is very important. There is just one little problem. The Mach E does not qualify for the full $7,500 tax credit, and some of the competition does. Most notably the General Motors competition, and of course a lot of the Tesla lineup as well. This does qualify for some portion of it, and if you lease a Mach E, the leasing company may give you a $7,500 rebate on that lease as well. So exactly how you're cross-shopping, what your tax situation is, and whether you're leasing or buying, all of that is going to sort into whether or not this is more, less, or about the same as the competition. To be honest though, even if this was more than a Blazer or an Equinox, I think that the Ford Mach E is worth it. And if I were shopping for another vehicle right now, as I said in the drive portion of the video, I have very fond memories of my Mach E. I would probably buy another one. Would I buy this over something like an Equinox, given the really aggressive pricing on the Equinox? You know, that's a really hard question to answer. The Equinox doesn't have the front trunk. It does have a slightly smaller cargo area in the back, and it has a slightly smaller back seat. And then of course, it's not gonna be rear-wheel drive. That's the bigger dynamic difference. This is gonna be a lot more fun any way you slice it versus the Equinox. But the Equinox could get down to essentially $27,500. That is a really, really low price tag for a 319-mile range EV. Versus the Tesla lineup, I think it would be a no-brainer to look at something like this if you want something different. If you want native access to the Tesla charging network, hey, guess what? We actually have that via the adapter that is going to be standard on the Mach E. Although you will have to use the adapter and you won't have access to all of the supercharger network. It's about 2/3 or so. Still pretty darn convenient. I like the ride quality in the Mach E. I like the adaptive dampers. I would swap out the white wheels for something else. But to be honest, I would probably buy this Rally trim. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comments section below. What would you get if you were shopping for a Mach E? I would say if you're shopping for that premium trim, you know, you might want to check out the GT because we get the adaptive dampers on that model. And then of course, if you want the ultimate in ride quality, get this, you know, just deal with the white wheels. Let me know what you think about that. Be sure and check out our updated videos on the Blazer EV and the upcoming Equinox EV. It's going on sale right around the time that this is going on sale as well. See all of you down there in the comments section, type away, find us over at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc., etc. And hopefully you are all home and dry. See all of you later.